good? Okay, guys. We before we get going here, obviously wanted to say that our thoughts and prayers are with Ricky Pearsall, and his family. Obviously, a difficult thing to go through there, but we are glad that he's feeling better and that he is stable and on his way back to a full recovery. A little bit of a summary of the Miami game. I want to thank our fans. Our fans showed up. And did a great job. We need to do our part, and so that they could have been more of a factor in the game. I think certainly we contributed to that. Offensively, we didn't block them very well, in the run game, and certainly struggled in protection at times. And we lacked precision in the throw game. And I think conversion downs in the first half, obviously we went 0 for there, and that was critical. We couldn't sustain drives. We lack consistency. We need more plays where we've got 11 players doing exactly what they should do. And defensively, 2 critical penalties that led to touchdowns on those possessions. They played ahead of the sticks. I thought they did a good job. They had balance. We struggled to affect the quarterback. The pass rush was not much of a factor. And I do think that he made some plays. The quarterback played a heck of a game and made some plays on some extended plays. We had a few miscommunications in the back end in man coverage. 2 led to touchdowns. I will say this, defensively there's a lot of good things on the tape. Although they did score a bunch of points and move the ball, I do think that the players played extremely hard. I thought that they played tough. I thought that they played with good fundamentals, but we've got some things that we need to clean up. We just have to be a little bit more consistent. We'll have a player make a mistake that keeps a drive alive. Special teams was the bright spot. I thought all 6 phases of the kicking game, the film was really impressive, probably the best I've been around as a head coach, to be quite honest. And I do think the team is in good condition. There was not a ton of loafs on the tape. I think reality here is that execution wins, and we did not do enough to be competitive in the game. We got to go do it when it counts, and that's reality. So we'll get another opportunity this week. Obviously, a Sanford team that has history with Florida. Chris Hatcher is a great coach. I think this is year 10 for him. Sanford's one of the more competitive FCS programs in the country. He's done a good job of building a program. They've continued to invest there. And he's got a good mix of players. He's got some portal players, and he's also got some good high school players. And they have a history of being competitive in these games. They've played several of these throughout their time. And I've got a ton of respect as a former FCS guy. These games are important to programs like Sanford. So one thing that we're going to do this week is we're going to punt all the injury questions until Wednesday. We're working on our in-house process as far as the SEC injury report, and then we'll have some information for you on Wednesday officially. And we're going to try to work, we're kind of bulletproofing our process in-house. So what questions do we have?
There was quite a bit of rotation along the offensive line. You mentioned the struggles in pass pro. What led to so much changing, especially with guys like Austin Barber, who performed pretty well, but didn't really get to play as many snaps as some other guys?
Well, I think we made a commitment and a decision to play guys in rotations based off of how they've been practicing. And Devin Manuel had some good days in Austin. It was competitive there to some degree. I think we played Devin the 3rd, 6th, and 9th series or something like that. So not the entire game, but a commitment to play a guy who took all the reps in spring. Now, obviously, that all those things change week to week, right? We go back to square one, and we've got got some evidence from the game there that some guys can do better.
I know what you just said, but people want to know, so I'm going to ask it this way. Do you have to have DJ ready to go on Saturday as the starter?
Well, it's to be determined right now. I think we're moving our way. you're talking specifically about Graham, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we are checking boxes in protocol, so regardless of the injury that he has, I don't have that answer today, right? But we're going to go practice today, and obviously DJ will be taking those reps.
How confident, or just are you in him based on what you saw on Saturday? If he was to start, how his readiness and so forth?
Well, I mean, I think we would play a brand of football that reflects his experience and his strengths, right? No different than we do each week. But I've got a ton of confidence in DJ. I think we've had him since January. He's a completely different person and player than he was when he first arrived. So he's got a really good knowledge of our system. I do think coach to player helps a young quarterback, right? So there's an advantage there that maybe you wouldn't have had a year ago. Do you have something else, Andy?
I was going to say, does the way Saturday shook out make you question the roster construction methods? Because Miami obviously was much more aggressive in the portal and has been. Do you feel like you could have improved the roster faster doing it more similarly to the way they did it?
Well, a lot of things contribute to those decisions, right? I mean, it's not necessarily like, okay, hey, this is our philosophy and this is how we're going to go do it. I mean, I think there's a number of factors that contribute to your ability and strategy in terms of how you build a roster, right? So we've got our fair share of success in the portal as well, So I think ultimately, specifically the quarterback, I would say, is the main difference maker, So we've been in that situation before. We went and got Graham Mertz.
Billy, how are you guys dealing with the negative reaction? You talked about it the other night, but how are you guys kind of weathering that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, again, I think we've got a responsibility to represent this place, and we need to do it better. That's to keep it very blunt. I think as coaches, we need to do our part to help the players, and then obviously we have a handful of players that can play better as well. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's part of the job. I mean, I think, and ultimately I would tell you that whether it's failure or success, you're always managing that part of the job, regardless of where you're at. So I think it's critical that you set the tone from a leadership standpoint. You've got to be a really good example to the players, and you try to keep it technical. You try to make them realize, hey, look, when you do it right, you get a good return. When you make mistakes, when you're playing a really high-quality opponent, the margin of error is small, you get exposed, right? So I think that's the message. It's just like, look, here's the tape. Here's what you need to do better. Here's what we can do better to help you. I mean, I think we got to take all parts of the building have to take ownership. But, yeah, I mean, I don't see it. It's part of the job.
I mean, how hard is a bunker mentality, though, in 2024? I mean, when you had a staff of, 9 people, 2 GAs, and whatever recruit, I mean, there wasn't a lot of people seeing, hearing. You got a huge staff. A lot of young guys are on social media. The devices are out 24/7. I mean, how do you kind of have a bunker mentality these days?
I think you'd be surprised. I mean, it's the world that young people grow up in today. When it's good, it's good. It's bad, it's bad. I would tell you the seasons is probably a little easier than the off season, to be quite honest, because you've got a task that's right in front of you that you can focus on. And you have an immediate opportunity to go maybe change the result, So, I joke around all the time. I think young people are more resilient than the adults are to some degree. So, they're used to it. Maybe we're not, So, but yeah, I mean, I think you're going to get criticism when you perform the way we did Saturday in certain parts of our team.
Keeping it technical sounds easy, but I'm sure it's not. Is the emotional part for you, is it hard to try to maybe flush that stuff and present the side that you want to present to the team?
Yeah, it is probably one of the bigger challenges you have as a head coach, in terms of turning the page. How do you filter the results? How do you evaluate the game, especially when it's negative? And I would tell you one of the other big challenges, when you do win, but maybe you were sloppy and you didn't play well, that's another big challenge, because they're all happy-go-lucky, but reality is like, look, I can remember standing up here when we beat Utah the first year telling you guys, like, look, I know everybody thinks we're going to win the Super Bowl this year, but we have things that we have to clean up as a team, right? So, I would say this, there is no better learning experience than game experience. There's an old military line like, we can have a lecture about bullets flying, okay, and we can talk about that all for years, but when you're in there and the bullets are flying, I think that's an area where the consequences become real. I've played on championship teams. I've been a part as a coach on national championship teams, SEC championship teams, conference champions, division champions, and very rarely did we win every single game. And I think ultimately a loss early can be a blessing if you don't waste it. And I think ultimately, one thing I can say is we have a group that's working hard. I do think that we have character. We got to go to work on the football part, and I think we got to become a more consistent team, and we have to execute better. And if we can focus on those things and not necessarily what some guy in his basement saying in rural Central Florida on social media, then we got a chance to get better, right? So I think that's the key, But sometimes you deserve criticism, and I think that's one of those things I would say. I have no excuses, right? So we got to go get it fixed.
I know you did anything, Coach, that you saw on film after analyzing the film that was uncharacteristic from what you'd seen in the fall as you prepare for the game? Anything that obviously that would be disappointing, but was there anything that was just uncharacteristic of what you had been seeing in the fall?
Yeah, I think I just think offensively we weren't very clean. I didn't think that we weren't very precise. I think we pressed a little bit, and I think overall every position group, the running back group had a solid day, but I think all the other position groups could be much better, in my opinion, based off what I've been observing in practice.
Like pace on route running, things like that.
Yeah, 100%.
Billy, you said a loss early can be a blessing if you don't waste it. What gives you confidence that this program can not waste this one?
I just think we've got the group of players that we have. I think observing them, we had almost the entire team came to the building yesterday when they were off, right? So I think that's a good example of, the type of group that we have here. So, look, they're embarrassed. That's reality, right? So, I said it post-game. I think they know they're capable of better. And look, got every opportunity. There's a lot of football left here, and I think that's what we got to do. We got to focus on the next opportunity.
Did the result cause you to kind of look at any of the specific game prep process? Are there changes that you think you need to make immediately? What were your thoughts on just how the week leading up went and the processes within that?
Yeah, I think offensively that I had, I think that I was a little surprised, to be quite honest with you. I thought we'd play much better. That's just the honest truth. I do think defensively there's a lot of good on the tape. I think Miami, I think the quarterback's a really good player. So I think he played a heck of a game, made some exceptional throws. He's a challenge. They got a good group of skill, and they did a nice job protecting him. So, but I do think the kicking game was impressive. So we got work to do.
Billy. What's DJ gonna have to do to kind of accelerate his, well, I mean, just kind of his readiness, I guess would be a way to say it this week?
Well, you would like to think that he just finished preparing as if he was one play away from being out there, you know, and I think ultimately that's what we try to do for the backup is create an environment where, like, you know, every day is a challenge, just like you're going to have to run out there, you know, and be the starter the entire week. You know, that's what we've always challenged the backup to do is like, look, you got to start your week as if you're going to be the guy, you know, knowing that the entire building is going to be dependent on you when you get that opportunity. And really that applies to all backups. You know, I think you want a culture where the backup is working consistently as if he may have to play, because this is a game where players get hurt, you know, and I think the depth that you have at every single position, not just quarterback, it's key that you've got that type of culture and how you prepare for the game each week.
I know you said that no excuses, obviously. I mean, how would you evaluate yourself from a play calling standpoint, first 4 or 5 drives of the game?
Well, I think that offensively as a whole, you know, the entire approach there, every part of our building is being quality control every day. So I think that part is obviously, you know, part of the equation, right? So I think in general here, this is no different than the itinerary from Friday, Saturday, and what we can do better from a travel perspective. Every part of our building is being evaluated.
Would you see
Okay, you mentioned that there's nothing like getting live snaps for a guy. What would it mean for DJ to get a full game? I mean, how would that expedite his maturation?
Well, just the fact that he got to play a couple possessions the other day, I think, and then to see him realize, like, okay, now I know, you know, what it's like out there. I think we dealt with that a little bit with some of the freshmen that had to play last year, right? So, but yeah, I mean, I was a player. You know, I can still remember the first time I ran out there against William and Mary on the road as a redshirt freshman. You know, I mean, and we got control of the game, and I'm out there playing. You know, I mean, there's no substitute for, you know, you have that. It's just imprinted in your mind, you know. So, side story, I got a concussion in that game too. But, you know, I think there's no substitute for that, right? So, I mean, I think in particular at quarterback, I think it's just really valuable.
What was Russ's first game as co-OC? He was up in the box. How did that dynamic work where you guys are talking and he has kind of a different, almost 30,000-foot view being up there?
Yeah, Russ has done a good job leading the offensive staff. You know, he's taken some things off of my plate, and he's a bright young coach, and certainly it's been good to see him be more involved. You know, I think definitely a positive to have him up there and have his eyes for sure.
Is he calling plays at all, or is it still you and like all collaborative effort?
Well, I think all of that, you know, I think is going to be determined based off of how we perform. You know, I think his role, you know, we want to give him a bigger piece of the pie. We've done that. And then I think each week we evaluate that accordingly.
How would you evaluate Pup Howard's play?
I thought Pup did a lot of good things, you know. You know, I think Pup's one of the more, I think he's got leadership traits. I think he's mature. He's big. He's rangy. I thought he played well. I think the linebacker group as a whole did a lot of good things. We've got to be a little bit better in some of our zone coverage drops. You know, that was one of the issues that we had in the game. But Pup's got a bright future for sure.
What about safety play? How'd you evaluate safety play? I mean, you had a lot of experienced guys out there, and just did it come together the way you thought it would?
I think that overall there was some good there. I mean, I think some of our issues were in we had some man-to-man miscommunications. We had some underneath zone coverage communication. Some of the extended plays, you know, where we need to stick on guys when the quarterback extends the play. But again, I think it's never as good, never as bad, I think, on defense as you think. I mean, I think they played well. The quarterback, I think, is an exceptional player. But I think we've got a chance to have a good unit on defense. I really believe that.
A lot of new coaches and new faces on that side of the ball. How was the communication on game day there?
Yeah, I think we played clean. I think the execution part, that's where we got, I don't think we had any issues there. Coach the player was smooth. I think the tablets on the sideline was a huge benefit. I think that, we executed the game day weekend. I think it overall went really well. Got to play better.
There was a lot of concern about Montrell in fall camp, certainly to see him perform the way he did. How much confidence does that give you going forward with his status?
Yeah, no, he's great. Obviously, he had a minor scope. It's one that's people have overcome. No surprise that he came back quicker than most. His self-discipline, his work ethic, his toughness. And then, the guy's just an experienced player. I think he went over 2,500 yards Saturday. So, and he's one of the best leaders that we have in terms of his example. I mean, he's what you want.
Coach, you talked about previous experiences, in your coaching career. Is there any that you could point to where the initial game just wasn't really great, but then as the season progressed, things really got turned around? And, is that something that you can kind of recall and then draw from, or is it just kind of
Yeah,
uncharted?
no, we had a handful of losses at Alabama in the first half of the season, that I think gave you a chance to kind of recenter just from a, urgency standpoint that I think allowed us to get the most out of our team. We had a number of times there where we slipped up early in the year, and it ended up being a positive just because I think it got everybody's attention. And I think the same at Louisiana. We had a couple losses early in the season that I think makes it real, like, hey, look, we've got to be at our best or we're going to face the consequences. And then it kind of puts your back against the wall a little bit in terms of long-term, some of your goals. So there's got to be more. Again, there's no substitute for that.
Can you point to one particular key that really drove the message home, or was it just
you tell
something?
the truth. I think ultimately kept player ownership. I think certain parts of your building realizing that, hey, look, I got to pick it up. My piece of the pie maybe didn't, come to play. So my contribution to the staff, my contribution to the team, I need to go to work and do my job better, right? I think all hands on deck in that regard, because I think if you're doing it right, everybody contributes and everybody feels as if they can make a difference, right? So what I would hope is happening right now is no matter if I'm the equipment guy or I'm the strength coach or I'm the offensive line graduate assistant, I'm thinking about, man, in that 10-day prep, what could I have done better that maybe would have affected the outcome to some degree? So I think it's a challenge to each part of your building, each person, not only football players now, we're talking about staff members as well. And you got to use it, and I think that's the key.
The NFL fines its defenders for roughing the passer, late hits on the quarterback. Are you guys at that point where you're able to fine these guys for that?
No, we technically aren't allowed to do that. Okay.